look at the trending things about the KKK and Nick Cannon? Will you do a short synopsis and history about the allegations of being tied to the Dems? And will you compare both political parties and tell me who is more likely to be in the KKK? Today, trending news. Nick Cannon has been up in arms because he's making liberals angry that he is announcing the Democratic Party is the party of the KKK. Now, whether he means today or history, it's hard to tell, but he's not wrong. The KKK was adopted by the political party back in the, where was it? 1865 it emerged, and then it was adopted by the political party and used as an instrument of a political party until the late 1870s. So it established on the Democratic side. They used it to overthrow Republican governments. And they did it because they wanted to restore white supremacy and undermine Republican-led efforts to establish civil and political rights for Black Americans. What's funny is the original Klan was started in 1865 in Pulaski, Tennessee. The officers were Confederate Army officers, lost the war of the Civil War, and still created a vigilante group to go after the people they blamed, the Black people, as opposed to the white people who fought for the Black people to be equal. They did not see the Republicans as the problem. They didn't see the conservatives as the problem. They still saw the problem as the problem, and we solved the problem anyway. So until, well, formed as like a social club, some little like Discord gathering nowadays, the group quickly evolved into a violent organization under the leadership of Nathan Bedford Forrest, who served as its first Grand Wizard. And then a second, significantly larger iteration of the Klan was established in 1950. What they don't tell you is literally by about the 1870s, 1880s, 1890s, the Klan really started dying out because the policy wasn't, hey, we should be doing these things. The policy was, hey, we're just kind of being assholes. So once you get to this part where they skip through it into Georgia, and you have William Joseph Simon on Stone Mountain, you're talking now just a little over 100 years ago. It was a huge revival of hatred, and the film The Birth of the Nation was like expanded here on this, and it's this huge like anti-Catholic, anti-Semitic agenda that showed up literally in like the 1950s or 1915s. So the first Klan was 65 to 72. Literally didn't even last a decade. Second Klan showed up and is still being talked about as if it's the world's greatest travesty. Like it's a two-parter because it's really kind of half imagined, but it's fully real. It's very hard to explain because these are ideas that have lived on, but not necessarily plans. And so now Nick Cannon is telling people that the Democratic Party is the party of the KKK. They didn't start it. He didn't say they created the KKK or anything. This is just the party of. So looking here, let's see what we came up with. It took a 55-second thought process by Grok here. We asked it. Once again, I'm going to refresh here. Can you look at the trending things about the KKK and Nick Cannon? Will you do a short synopsis and history about his allegations of being tied to Dems? And will you compare both political parties and tell me who is more likely to be in the KKK? So the trending connection between Nick Cannon and the KKK as of today, March 29th, 2026. Nick Cannon is trending heavily after comments he made on a recent episode of his web talk show, Big Drive, filmed around the 27th to 28th. Most people don't understand podcasts versus movies or TV. Podcasts can be created, edited, and uploaded within a matter of minutes to hours, depending on if the editing is being done live or if it's being done behind the video. In this case of this video, I'm probably not going to edit anything, as I tend to plan mine a bit first and then try to put them out in as short as period as possible. So this is going to be an unedited, non-podcast video, merely informational, where his podcast is where they will sit and discuss different topics and things. And at some point, if you go and watch it, you can go find it, search on Twitter, Google, whatever. You can go find Nick Cannon talking on Big Drive. And the conversation, Amber Rose, he agreed with her view that Democrats do not, and this is the quote, don't care about people of color and the Republicans do. Then explicitly called the Democratic Party, quote, the party of the KKK. He added that, quote, people don't know that the Republicans are the party that freed the slaves. and then praised Trump, saying he, quote, give me a second, the quotes. I can't tell if that's fucks with him for cleaning house. I don't know. I don't understand. They've blocked out half the whole letters in some of these. And delivering promises on his referencing border policies in Gulf of America. Oh my God. The clip spread rapidly on social media, sparking backlash, debate, and accusations of historical oversimplification from critics. Well, I just told you guys the history, so I didn't oversimplify it. It didn't exist for like 30 years, and then it shows back up. And for like 100 years, we're sitting around with this boogeyman of the KKK that people are afraid of being called some kind of a white racist. And realistically, a black man calls people white racists and they get upset. I'm confused how we don't see the irony. That's exactly what started this to begin with. Was black people not feeling like they were being treated enough, and white people saying that's right, and other white people saying you're wrong, fuck you. Like, this is literally how it started the first time. So here we are again, a black person infuriating a bunch of white liberals. And I have to giggle because they're upset at the premise that he's calling them, and people are super like stuck on their political identity. He's calling Democrats the party, not the people, not the people serving, not the people in power, the party, as an overall statement, as a blanket statement, like saying all men are worthless, lying, cheating pigs. That's literally what he just said. And you people are losing your mind. Okay. So let's talk about the short synopsis because they've oversimplified it real quick. Looks like we have 5 or 6 paragraphs. We have a learning day today. Sorry, it'll be about 15 minutes. The short synopsis of Cannon's allegations and their context. Cannon's statement is a direct and now viral allegation that the modern day Democratic Party remains tied to the legacy of the Ku Klux Klan as its party. He framed it as an overlooked history. Democrats created and led the KKK while Republicans abolished slavery. Now, he did not say that, and I don't like it said that. He merely said that the party of. He didn't say that they created. We looked back at the history. It didn't create it. So the AI is definitely adding a bit of flair from what it's read, the synopsis of what it's found. I don't like that because we just went through and proved that none of that was said, literally in the previous paragraph. So we're going to make sure to take some of this stuff with a grain of sand and a grain of salt because we can't tell the difference when it's white sand and white salt. This is not a long-running personal allegation against Cannon himself. No evidence of prior claims tying him to Democrats in the KKK context. Rather, it's a recent public stance he took, aligning with a common conservative talking point. Cannon has historically criticized the two-party system and has not been a hardcore partisan. This is why I took note. I am a hardcore two-party system analyzer and criticizer. I think both parties are broken. I think both parties need help, and I think people in both parties need to wake the fuck up. Besides that, I think it can be fixed, but I think it takes a bunch of people who didn't want to have to get their hands dirty to now step up and say, we might have to get our hands dirty to make sure that our children don't have to go through the shit we're going through now. So I start to watch people who are fighting both sides, but looking for ways to fix it, as opposed to somebody who fights both sides, but just sits around and complains all the time. If you don't have a fix and you're just going to complain, you're no different than both sides fighting. You're just a third party doing nothing. If you're not willing to research, look at history, find people, and better your position, then you're not worth being a part of the talk. Because you've already made an opinion, you're not looking at any of the evidence, and you've already been programmed like every NPC on the planet has. So I like people who absolutely do not accept the programming. So let's talk the historical background. Historical background. The first KKK was founded in 1865 and 1866 in Polsky, Tennessee. Hey, we found that already. By the 6 Confederate soldiers, all Democrats in a solidity Democratic South. Very quickly became a terrorist group targeting Black Americans, Republican voters, and Reconstruction efforts after the Civil War. Wow. Imagine that. Its goal was to restore white Democratic supremacy in the South by intimidating freed Black people who overwhelmingly voted Republican, go figure, and murdering or suppressing Republican officials. Nice. So they are definitely the party of tolerance, I guess. The first Grand Wizard was Nathan Bedford Forrest, a predominant Democrat Congressional Democrats in the era largely opposed federal anti-KKK measures, and many Southern Democrats tolerated or participated in the group. What's funny is most people don't know that states and federal laws differ tremendously. Hearing audio. Note to self, I might need to put like a little audio in the background, some kind of gentle music or something. I'm afraid to put people to sleep. Like, I do that enough with my voice. So most people don't realize a lot of states and federal laws do not line up and differ tremendously. And state constitution generally can supersede federal constitution unless they're thought about in the SCOTUS, and SCOTUS gives certain determinations one way or the other. It's the whole point of having the Supreme Court. So the way it works is the states will say things until they get the attention of the governments. This is kind of like managers and owners. When owners take notice of the things their employees are doing, say on social medias or things or stuff, owners tend to get very upset because they don't generally know or have any clue of how life or thing or social or business workings deal for their employees to be saying, doing, or whatever they're doing, whether they're being obscene with themselves or saying things against the company or giving trade secrets out or talking the company up. Sometimes even talking the company up the right way is not the way they want. It's the wrong way, and they get mad at you for it. Sometimes doing what they need. And this has always been the problem between owners and management. When management is not doing a good job of keeping owners informed, or people are not doing a job of keeping leaders informed, we have these pockets of people who think they know what's going on. All the people around them are people just like them. Same information, same data, same problems. So they always have the same issues and the same answers. But they don't actually solve anything because you don't get to hear from any other sides or any other news or anything else. Because if you don't listen to me, we don't hang out with you. If you don't listen to where I get my stuff, we don't hang out with you. And that's part of the problem. So we go back to this. The members were hanging out with these people because they had a lot of voices of, white people who wanted to be separate. We want to be better. We want to be whatever. Okay, great. So this is where it starts and gets problematic. The 1960s, let's go back. The found of the KKK. It was fact-checked, note, and the party organizers did not officially found the KKK. So we know the Democrats didn't found it. They adopted it and said, that kind of sounds good, and a lot of people are following you, so we're going to go with the people we think can help make sure we get into office. Because though we want to help people, sometimes the means justify the end. The ends justify the means. And I don't feel like that's right in this case. I feel like they took a bad step, and I feel like they've never really come back from it. And that's where really we're stuck at, is they want to wipe it out, because if we wipe it out, we won't ever know how bad it is. But listen to this. The second KKK. And people go, wait, the second KKK? There's two KKKs? There's two big old... No, there's one group that started and died within 8 years, started and stopped at 72. Okay, so 80, 65, 72. Not even a decade. And then hugely in the 1920s, it showed kind of back up in the 15s, and then a huge outcome in the 60s. But here's the problem. By the 60s, you're talking 100 years later. 1865 to 1960s, you're not talking 100 years of the same things, the same people, an evolving process. You're talking about a broken system built in order to repress and attack people, because we don't have the backing of a people being suppressed. We now have an idea of the backing, whether or not they're suppressed. And that's what's happened. So the second KKK from 1915 onward to today, we'll call it, was larger and more national. They added anti-Catholic, anti-immigrant, and anti-Jewish elements. Oddly enough, you guys are that way today. The Palestinians, and you're fighting for the tyranny of having Iran show up and bomb the world. They're bombing their buddies, and you guys are like, but it's only because we're hurting them. Well, it's only because they're murdering 30,000 people, because they were fighting for their right to be free, like you, fighting for your right to have no kings, even though we don't have any. But We have a king for a governor. This one. No, decline. So, it had members in both parties, especially in the Midwest and North, where it sometimes infiltrated Republicans. Indiana's Klan dominated the GOP machine in the 1920s, but in the South, it remained tied to the Democratic politics. By the 1960s, KKK violence opposed the civil rights movement, and some of its supporters later shifted to the Republican Party during the South's realignment. Now let's compare the two parties today. Okay, I've held you guys long enough. Historically, 1865, mid-20th century KKK membership and leadership were overwhelmingly Democratic, especially in the South, the one-party Democratic reign. Republicans were the main targets of the Klan, violence alongside black voters. Modern era, post-1960s to now. The KKK is a tiny, fragmented fringe, dozen of small rival chapters, total membership of the low thousands, per watchdogs like the SPLC. And it has been in long-term decline. It has zero mainstream presence or endorsement in either major party. Both Democrats and Republicans routinely denounce the KKK as a hate group, and there are no current elected officials or party leaders in either party who are known KKK members. Empirically, reliable, public data on the current party affiliation of KKK members is scarce because the groups are small, secretive, and not polled directly. However, contemporary KKK offshoots and similar white supremacist organizations are classified by the FBI, ADL, and SPLC as part of a far-right domestic extremism. Academic studies of white nationalist views and 1960s to present Southern realignment show that the ideological remnants of segregationists, Klan-era politics largely migrated to the Republican Party via the Southern strategy, another thing we could look up, but that's a history lesson for tomorrow, and a broader conservative shift. Self-identified white nationalists in surveys lean heavily conservative and Republican. In short, someone who is actually in the modern KKK is far more likely to hold right-wing or Republican-aligned views than Democratic ones, though most Republicans reject them outright, just as most Democrats do. The Democratic Party today has no institutional or ideological ties to the KKK. Its modern base and platforms are opposite of white supremacy. Cannon's point captures historical truth about the KKK's democratic origins, but ignores the party's 20th century realignment on race and civil rights. Neither party owns the KKK today. It's a discredited relic rejected across the political spectrum. The overwhelming majority of Americans in both parties view it with disgust. Based on how each party acts towards Americans, how do I spell that? Oh, sorry. It's an A. One B is which side of wait, based on what American history side today acts more like I don't know, overlord what the I don't know how to spell this word at all. So A-U-T-H. I got this bad. Yeah, I know. Got a authoritarian. Based on what Americans know of history, which side today acts more authoritarian with respect to its people, tactics, and protests? Because I'm really curious, because one side or the other is always pushing some narrative. It's always a political statement, and the worst part is, since 2012, we've been allowed the ability to have propaganda pushed in our face, where before it couldn't be propaganda. Now we have no choice. It's everywhere. It's just whatever sells clicks. And most people don't realize that happened, a decade ago. Kids are just learning about it, but the teachers aren't teaching it, because if we teach that these things happen and we can undo them, we can go back to getting real news, real data, real things, instead of whatever make-believe makes clicks. I wonder if this is going to be longer than our 55 last question. It took 55 seconds to produce the last one. We broke it. 56. I love using Grok for this stuff. I love watching it go through and evaluating and bringing up different things. It's my favorite. I can go look at any other AI, and I do quite frequently, and then pit them against Grok. And Grok's always got a nice looking activity list of what it does, where it looks, and then it comes in and gives you a nice listing. Now, I asked for something kind of heavy, so in a second here, I'm going to make it summarized because I'm not reading all this. So it says neither side has a monopoly on authoritarianism. Both parties in their aligned movements have used coercive tactics, suppressed dissent, or escalated protests when it suited them. But if we're judging strict about most Americans learn and stand in U.S. history classes, founding era, Federalist overreach, Jacksonian spoil system, Civil War suspensions of habeas corpus, Jim Crow, internment camps, McCarthyism, COINTELPRO, etc., and by measurable behavior on treatment of people, tactics, and protests. In the last decade plus, the left or Democratic aligned side has acted more consistently authoritarian in culture, institutional, and protest arenas that directly touch everyday Americans. The right and Republican side has its own sins, especially when wielding state power, but they are less persuasive or pervasive, on the specific dimensions you asked about. Here's the evidence-based breakdown. Treatment of its people, coercion, speech, and daily life. Left Dems, heavy emphasis on top-down control via institutions they dominate. Academia, media, HR departments, big tech, pre-2025. Public health bureaucracies. Classic examples. Americans know COVID-era mandates, lockdowns, shutdowns that shuttered businesses and schools for years, often with uneven enforcement and little accountability. Labeling parents at school boards domestic terrorists. DOJ memo 2021, widespread cancel culture firings, deplatformings, and social ostracism for wrongthink on race, gender, or COVID. Survey, Fire Gallup, constantly showed self-censorship highest among conservatives and moderates in left-controlled spaces. Each year, Fire memes the shames the worst of the 10, worst of the worst silencers, bowed lasuriers, and steamrollers of free speech. Right GOP, more focused on immigration enforcement, crime, and under Trump 2.0, targeted accountability for political opponents or media. Critics call this retribution or executive overreach, e.g. 2025 firings after Charlie Kirk assassination, the FCC pressure on networks, defiance of some court orders. But these are narrower and more recent. They don't match the decade-long cultural chilling effect on the left. Polls show Americans across parties view both as unethical and extreme, but the left's institutional dominance gave it a broader daily life reach. History note, Americans know that Democrats' party spent a century as the party of slavery, the KKK, Jim Crow, and the segregationists' violence, textbook authoritarian control over a radical underclass. The parties realigned on race in the 1960s and 70s, but the left never fully shed the instinct for group-based coercion, now reframed as equality and DEI. Dang, we're getting a history lesson I didn't expect today. Holy crap! Tactics, lawfare, censorship, institutional weaponization. The left and Dems collusion with tech government for content moderation, Twitter files, Biden-era pressure on platforms, and the selective prosecution, Trump indictments timed for elections, J6 versus 2020 riot leniency, disinformation bureaucracies. This was soft authoritarian, how do you say that word? I've never been able to say this word right. Authoritarianism. Right? Authoritarianism. I just can't ever. The middle just becomes a bundle of numbers or letters I can't get through. I'm going to try to pronounce that here. A-U-T-H. I keep getting stuck into it. I can't. That's just stupid. Yeah, I know. Thanks. Where's the hear it button? Fucking.
Authoritarianism.
Authoritarianism. It's got a terry in the middle. I can't seem to pronounce right. Authoritarianism. 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 Okay, fine. Controlling the narrative without always needing jackboots. The fuck is a jackboot? A stout military boot that extends above the knee. Oh, the person uses bullying tactics, especially to force compliance. Got it. The spirit of sustaining and motivating a militaristic, highly aggressive, and totalitarian regime or system. So it's definitely probably number 2. Okay. The right GOP lawfare cuts both ways. Trump DOJ moves against Comey, Letitia James, etc. in 2025. But pre-2025, the right lacked the institutional levers and the left had. Recent Trump 2.0 actions purges media threats, are aggressive and draw authoritarian turn. It's not the other word, it's a different word. Headlines from democracy watchdogs, yet the same watchdogs rated U.S. democracy mediocre to declining under Biden too. The drop in expert ratings, Bright Line Watch, VDem, Freedom House is real but heavily partisan. Academia and NGOs lean left, so expect overstatement when Republicans hold power. Americans know from history that both parties have abused the DOJ and the FBI, Hoover, Nixon, Obama-era IRS, but the left's recent fusion of state, corporate, and cultural power have created a broader censorship industrial complex. 3. Protests. We're almost done. Left, Dems 2020, BLM, Antifa wave, months of riots, 25 deaths, billions in damages, autonomous zones with media Dem leaders calling it mostly peaceful, and bailing out rioters, 2024-2025 campus, Gaza protests, frequently turned into property destruction, intimidation, and encampments. Recent CSIS data shows left-wing terrorist incidents outnumber right-wing ones in 2025 for the first time in decades, though right-wing attacks remain deadlier historically. Police data, ACLED, shows left protests met with more forces because they were larger and more disruptive. Right GOP January 6th was ugly. 1 riot, 5 deaths total, including officer suicide. Hundreds charged. But it was one day versus a sustained left-wing unrest. Right-wing protests, the Tea Party, trucker convoys, post-2020 election were overwhelmingly nonviolent. 2025 data shows right-wing incidence is down while left-wing rose. That came out of Bridgington Divides at Princeton. Americans know from history, left-wing protest violence, whether underground 1960s, 70s riots to 2020, has been more sustained and tolerated by their own side. Right-wing extremism exists, but is smaller scale and is more lethal per incident. Bottom line from the data, Americans actually see. The left Dem side is the stronger recent track record on the 3 metrics you named: broader cultural coercion of ordinary people, narrative control tactics, and protest tolerance and escalation. Their institutional power let them normalize it. Right Republican side is more likely to use blunt state power when it holds the White House. See 2025 executive actions. But this episodic is not default cultural operating system. Political violence stats still show right-wing attacks deadlier overall, but left-wing incidences are rising and more protest-linked. Public opinion is split by tribe. Dems blame the right for violence, GOP blames the left. And democracy indices scream Trump authoritarianism in 2025, but those indices have credibility issues when the same experts downplayed left-wing institutional capture. History teaches that power corrupts whoever holds it. Right now, the left still dominate the commanding heights of culture and information. The right has the executive branch. Both are testing limits. The healthier response is consistent classical liberal standards, free speech, equal enforcement, peaceful protest applied to everyone, not tribal score setting. And there you have today's Trending with Nick Cannon, done by Demigorn in today's Church of Life, the Church of Things, Junk, and Stuff. Today was your things, junk, or stuff. Have a great day.